5 is Samsung's fifth iteration of the clamshell-style foldable devices. Let's take a look at some of the main upgrades from last year's Z Flip 4. The two main changes on the Z Flip 5 is the new hinge as well as the new cover display. So let's start with the main attraction and the biggest change and quality of life improvement on the Z Flip 5, which is the new cover display, which Samsung is calling it the Flex window. The Z Flip 5 comes with a new 3.4 inch 720 by 748 60Hz OLED cover display. That's about 3.5 times larger than the 1.9 inch on the Z Flip 4. The cover display reaches a peak brightness of 1600 nits, which is about 400 nits higher than last year's Z Flip 4. So definitely no issues viewing content in bright daylight. This time around you get a much more interactive experience on the cover display. Samsung provides a number of widgets similar to what's found on the Galaxy watches. Out of the box, being able to interact with the calendar, weather, voice recorder, and timer, just to name a few, all from the outside display. Applications can be further expanded by rummaging through the settings option under Labs to enable applications such as YouTube or Netflix, and I personally found myself enjoying the option of watching content on the outer display. Being able to respond to messages from the cover display are all welcome additions, especially handy for those quick replies without needing to flip open the device. I will say if you're using Maps or Spotify at the same time, it may be tricky to view the navigation window. With additional workarounds through downloading the Good Lock app on the Samsung Store and enabling an additional module called Multi-Star, you can essentially run any apps on the cover display. Your experience will differ depending on the apps that you're running, but from my experience it's been fairly positive. I especially appreciate the full cover art when listening to music on Spotify, but you probably want to refrain yourself from scrolling through Instagram or web pages on this smaller outer display. But I'm definitely appreciating Samsung giving users the options to do so if they wish to. With the bigger cover display also comes with a bigger canvas for customizing your own personalized lock screen. Samsung offers a huge range of personalization options, and you can pick your own wallpaper or wallpaper videos, selecting your own fonts and colors to suit. The other main addition to the Z Flip 5 is what Samsung calls the Flex hinge. This allows the screen to close completely, virtually removing any gap between the two screens. The new droplet style design means that when closed, the separation is 15.1mm thick, whilst it is 17.1mm thick on the Z Flip 4. The new zero gap hinge and overall slimmer design makes it an easier device to hold overall. However, it also means that it's slightly trickier to flip open the phone with one hand without the gap to fit your fingers in. Having it gapless means you should get less particles trapped in between and reduces the risk of build-up of lint. This may be the case in theory, but I still found that in most cases when opening up the device, still having to give it a quick wipe down before use. I'm unsure if it's because of the new hinge design or Samsung's tuning of the hinge. I found that with the Z Flip 3 it was very easy to unfold the device, while last year's Z Flip 4 it was very stiff. This year's Z Flip 5 to me is just the right touch, and Samsung has found a nice balance, providing a smooth unfolding experience. Now let's move on to the design. You get the same power button which doubles up as a fingerprint sensor, with the volume rockers on the same side just slightly above, a bottom firing speaker with the earpiece acting as a second speaker for stereo sound. The fingerprint sensor, however, is hit or miss, partially due to the small footprint in which it can detect. What is welcoming is that Face Unlock continues to work with the device closed, utilizing the rear camera to do so. I have here the Samsung Store exclusive color Grey, which has a matte finish over the whole of the device. Standardly, however, the Z Flip 5 will come in mint, graphite, lavender, and cream, which all have a polished aluminium finish, whereas the Samsung Store exclusive colors such as grey, blue, green, and yellow all have a matte finish. Personally, I prefer the matte finish over the glossy finish. The new hinge alongside what Samsung is calling armor aluminum frame means that it can withstand impacts better. The phone is also more durable with Gorilla Glass Victus 2 over the Victus Plus found on the Z Flip 4. One thing I would recommend doing is applying a screen protector on the outer display, as popping the phone on the table when unflipped means that part of the screen will be touching the surface. The device has an IPX8 rating, which is the same as last year's, which means it is resistant to full immersion to water, but it isn't dust resistant. So I definitely wouldn't recommend this if you spend a lot of time at the beach over the weekends. Let's move on to the inner display. The display is a 6.7 inch 2640 by 1080 120Hz dynamic AMOLED display. The screen is bright, contrasty with its AMOLED display and responsive with its 120Hz refresh rate. However, it is not an LTPO display, which means the screen is not able to toggle down refresh rate in order to save on battery. The screen is only set at Full HD+, unlike the Quad HD Plus screens like what is offered on flagship devices like the S23 Ultra. The screen gets equally bright and it peaks out at 1600 nits on brightness, the same as the Ultra display. Samsung has indicated that the screen is 25% more durable than previous models. Speaking of the panel, the display is a flat display unlike the curved displays found on the S23 Ultra. So if you prefer a flat display, the Flip 5 may be something to consider. I did find, however, while using the Z Flip 5 to be a little bit more top heavy due to the larger external display. There's been a few times while using the device that I felt like it would fall out of my hands. The aspect ratio of 22:9 is slightly taller than most phones on the market, meaning that you will find it more difficult to reach the opposite side of the screen. Unfortunately, with the Flip devices, the crease is still present and quite noticeable, especially when you're running your fingers across it. I haven't been able to tell any differences between the creases on the Flip 5 or the Flip 4, but it is much more noticeable off axis, and if this bothers you, then the foldable series isn't for you. This year, Samsung has introduced an improved flex mode panel for the Z Flip 5. Essentially, it moves the app to the top part of the display and allows a control panel-like option on the bottom. Personally, I didn't find this feature particularly useful during my time with the device. Let's move on to the performance. The Z Flip 5 comes with the latest Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 for Galaxy chipset, the same as what was found on the S23 series earlier this year. So you shouldn't have too much troubles running the latest games on the device. Samsung has marketed this year's chipset to be 25% better in terms of GPU performance and 17% better in CPU performance. Paired with 8 gigs of RAM alongside storage of up to 512 gigabytes, the device is snappy and I've yet to experience any issues with performance or multitasking. Though talking about the experience, I do feel that Samsung needs to step up with the haptics department as it's severely lackluster and soft when compared to the S23 series or the Pixel series. When it comes to battery and charging, Samsung remains fairly conservative. Battery capacity and charging speeds remain unchanged from last year's Z Flip 4. You'll get a 3700 mAh battery alongside 25 watts peak wired charging and 15 watt peak wireless charging. Reverse wireless charging is also available with only a maximum output of 4.5 watts. Personally, the phone has lasted me the whole day. I'm usually ending the day at around 30 to 40%, and that's with always on display turned on. Charging itself has been relatively quick, partly due to the smaller battery capacity. The combination of the more powerful efficient Snapdragon Gen 2 for Galaxy and more useful color display means I'm not always unfolding the phone. Let's move on to the cameras. This year's cameras on the Z Flip 5 remain unchanged from ones found on last year's Z Flip 4. You'll get a 12 megapixel wide-angle lens alongside a 12 megapixel ultra-wide with 128 degree field of view. Unfortunately, there is no telephoto lens on the Z Flip 5. Photos taken on the device are decent and serviceable. With ample lighting, the photos taken are great with high contrast and vibrant colors, but lacks details due to the smaller 12 megapixel lens compared to other devices at this price point. The Z Flip 5 can record video up to 4K 60 with its primary camera. Video footage from the main camera is good, there are details in the shot and it's not too heavily sharpened. The colors have a nice level of saturation with a good amount of dynamic range. With this year's larger external display on the Z Flip 5 makes for a much better viewfinder compared to last year's Z Flip 4. You can now see the entire frame when lining up your shots. Further adding to this experience, with the phone propped open halfway, you are able to use the phone as a tripod for hands-free selfies. Speaking of selfies, there's a 10 megapixel selfie camera on the inside of the screen, but it's definitely nothing to write home about. The nice thing with the flip form factor is that you'd be better off using the rear-facing cameras instead. Whether you're coming from the Z Flip 4 or looking for your first foldable device, the Flip 5 is definitely one to consider. The larger cover display is more useful and versatile, and Samsung continues to offer strong software support with 4 years of OS updates and 5 years of security patches. This year, more than ever, there's more competition within the clamshell style foldable devices, with Motorola recently introducing the Motorola Ultra 40 and the more budget-friendly version Motorola 40 here in Australia. The foldable series is definitely not a phone for everyone, but I'm definitely seeing more and more devices in the public. The competition has definitely caught up, and I hope to see Samsung innovate further, especially having led the way with flip devices in the last couple of years.